So when we acknowledge country, I think it's really important that we take that with us through the evening and keep front of mind that justice in the welfare system is really about racial justice as well, and first and foremost actually. So we're very lucky to have some great speakers this evening. Some of us are very tired. Thank you to everyone who was out in the sun with us today. It was windy and sunny, like the worst combination of weather for people who don't want to be tired. And now we're doing this. It's great. We are, as I said, live streaming. We are going to have a format where we're kind of trying to cover a lot tonight because the welfare system and the challenges that we face in it and the solutions to those challenges are really complex. And I find personally in my job is communications and media, people really want to oversimplify the issues that we're talking about. So we're going to have kind of three things. We're going to have a bit of policy context. We're going to talk about what the system's like and how we resist it in the now. And then we're going to go into some of the longer term thinking about how can we actually work together to put enough pressure, both in the political sphere and in the public sphere, to substantively change this thing and make it more fair and make it more livable. Because right now, whether we're talking about mutual obligations or whether we're talking about income, it isn't livable. And I think everyone who's on those payments or has been on them in the past knows that. So, very lucky to be joined by Dr. Elise Pine from ANU, and we've got Jay here, is National Coordinator for the Australian Unemployed Workers Union, and also was formerly our Policy Officer. We're going to start by talking policy, and then we're going to have a break. So everybody, while these guys are talking, think about your questions. We'll have a Q&A before the break. We'll have a bit more food, have some more drinks. We'll come back for a second session where we're talking more about our rights, how we assert them, and what we do next to make sure that we no longer need to work so hard to have our rights respected. So, that's all from me. Thank you very much for coming. I cannot tell you how much I appreciate seeing this many faces. It's very exciting to see the first day of our week of action going so successfully. So, Elise, please tell us more about your research.
Thanks. Hi everyone, I'm Elise, and thanks so much for having me. I also want to just acknowledge stolen land that we're meeting on and echo your comments about how brutal welfare system has been to First Nations people since settlers arrived. So yeah, thanks for that. My research, so I'm at the ANU and I've been looking at social policy for a while, cashless debit card and various bits of work for the dole. Recently, I just wanted to tell you a bit about some research that we did with the government giving the $550 supplement as part of coronavirus. And we were looking, and thanks to anyone in here that did our survey, awesome, or online, thank you so much. We were asking people about what was the positive impacts of getting the $550 and what were the negatives, and also what were the positives and negatives about having mutual obligations suspended. So heaps of people answered the survey, and the results, I don't know if you'll find them that surprising, but it kind of just flies in the face of basically current social policy coming from up in the hill in Parliament. So I just wanted to share a bit of that with you. The first was that when people got the $550, people were able to survive. And people were able to get food, medicine, they were able to pay off their debts, and people were already looking after their kids, but it helped people look after them a bit better. Like they could afford presents, look after, get books and stuff for schooling. So, people were super strategic about how they use their money. People talked a lot about that, and that also flies in the face of those ideas around the cashless debit card and income management that says, people can't manage their money properly. People absolutely manage their money properly. People's mental health and physical health increased because they weren't under so much stress from being pursued by job agencies, also stress from not having enough money to survive on, of course, but also being able to buy medicine to keep their health a bit better, eat a bit better. People also talked a lot about how people use the money and their time from not having to be doing what David Graeber says, this academic term, bullshit work, from work for the dole and mutual obligation stuff. People use their time and money to engage more in the labour market. So people were applying for jobs or looking for jobs that they wanted to do. People did further study. So that also flies in the face of that we need to keep people feeling, and getting a small amount of money because, people don't know what to do with themselves. We've got to, what did Morrison say? We need to compel, incentivise people to get back into the labour market. No, people are doing that anyway. And that's what we were talking about. People did huge amounts of community work with this extra money and with their time. And it shows because, people get accused of being welfare dependent, but actually society and the economy are dependent on all the unpaid work that people do. All the childcare, all the advocacy work, all the engagement in democracy and making the country better through all of this kind of work. People were doing that work because they got their time back and they had money to survive. So, people were super productive, but it just shows how limited the ideas of work are, which I think we'll talk more. And the other, I'm going on, but the last thing that people were talking about, because we also looked at people who didn't get the supplement, and there was also a lot of talk about how bad the lockdowns were, and for many different reasons. But most people who got the supplement talked about what a positive experience it was, and it just goes to show how horrible and cruel the system is that keeps people so far back that the general population gets, feels really, really bad during coronavirus. Everybody, when they get, a $5.50 supplement and their time back, starts to feel good again. It just shows how deep those inequalities are. So anyway, that's a bit of our research. It's getting launched next week, but plug the event. Philip Alston, the ex special UN Special Rapporteur on Extreme Poverty, and is going to speak. Rachel Seward, is going to speak also, and that's next Thursday. But we can talk about that later. But just to share a bit of the research, I think just shows how off the current policy is.
Thank you very much, Elise. And before we jump into, I've got a couple of questions for both of these folks. Does anybody else have a question about Elise's research before we move into more like the kind of existing policy ideas? No, none of it was surprising. That's how I felt. Oh, Avery, yes. Do you want to say your question, then I'll repeat it for the camera in the room?
I guess touching on the last thing that you said, would you say in general that your research sort of showed that the supplement gave people sort of dignity and allowed sort of people to pursue the things that they'd want to pursue rather than the things that they'd sort of had to pursue? And sort of, would you say that people experiencing that, would that have been, I guess, a net positive rather than, I guess, some people might say that they think people just doing what they want might be a negative? Like what are your thoughts around, I guess, what I've just asked?
Cool. So I'll just repeat that so everyone's got it. And we'll do that kind of for the night just so it's a bit easier than everyone running up and down. So the question is, I think we kind of possibly all agree that we did find people had more dignity with the supplement, but was that a net positive, and what does that mean? Because if we're being told that people sitting around on payments and doing stuff they want to do is a negative, is that borne out by evidence? Is that kind of sum that up? Yeah.
So not all going to the beach and surfing and things like that.
Yeah, is it great if we go to the beach?
Yeah, thanks for the... I mean, what it sort of shows is, yes, people did have dignity, feeling human again. That's what
you can do. Great. If anyone is actually watching right now, I'm very apologetic if there's a problem. Okay, so we've got something that worked, apparently. It looks like something worked. And we really do need to think about what we are asking for, not just what we're pushing back against, right? Everything that is punitive, everything that is hurting people is wrong, and we know it's wrong, and we have compelling arguments about why it's wrong, and no one who is right now in a position to completely change it is listening, or so it seems. So we want to really think about what the proposals are that are out there, and which of them we want, what are the problems with them, and how can we pursue them. So my first question is, it's for both of you, but I'll go to Jay first. We get a lot of people telling us what we should be asking for as the youth. They say, why do you want this number, or you should ask for this number, or instead of getting rid of mutual obligations, which is one of our demands, you should do this thing instead. So can you talk us through what some of those proposals are, the things people throw at us, and just explain a few of the kinds of ideas that are out there? There are many ideas that are out there. Just pick a handful.
Hi. The things that people proposed to yeah. Sorry, I'm just very nervous.
Okay, I am going to go straight to the second part of my question, which is what's wrong with the things that people propose to us, and that we're asking for.
Alright, let's do this again. Yeah, the half measures are just generally pretty bullshit because the entire system in which we're currently forced to operate within is just designed. It's not broken. It's just it's working perfectly, and it's designed to isolate. It's designed to subjugate, and it's essentially meant to crush you and mold you into something in which this, I don't know, society or culture perceives you to be of value to its idea, and it's wrong. We know that forcing, people to apply for 20 jobs a month, which it is just wrong, and forcing people to apply for any maximum amount of jobs per month is just wrong because, obviously the jobs aren't out there. So why should we go half the way and say, well, no, maybe we should just accept 8 jobs a month? Now, why not just say no to forcing people to apply for any work? People should apply for jobs in which they want to do, but in, this particular country, respect of us is just wrong. We should not at any point ever go half the way. We need to go all the way, and that's what the AEW has been about, and that's why we're unrelenting, and that's why our wonderful members and supporters call out ALP members to their face. Yes.
Oh yeah, thank you for whoever did that today.
So yeah,
Well done.
half measures.
Thank you. And on that point, I guess, I was just about to say we have been asked a few times in the last couple of days to be a bit more reasonable, and we kind of think the stuff we're asking for is pretty reasonable. I don't think we're going to get much disagreement in this room, but I think we have really good reasons for that. And there are a lot of what for some people might feel like quite inaccessible or wonky policy proposals that may help us all, right? Things that you might have heard of, like universal basic income, jobs guarantee, which the union has talked a lot about in the past, and we're trying to now develop a much more sophisticated understanding of what we mean when we say that sort of thing. So a lot of these policy ideas are getting more traction, especially in the wake of COVID. And I wanted to just ask you, Elise, a little bit about what you think the drawbacks and the positives are of those two proposals, and anything that's kind of related that's in your kind of on your radar.
Well, I think any idea that's trying to get at an unconditional economic security, to me, is good. That should be good. That at the very basis, and for many reasons, I come from it that there is just so much money going around that all of us contribute to society. And that, there's this sort of idea from a guy called James Ferguson about a rightful share, that everybody should have a share in society. So I think that any economic security, unconditional, is, So, these different ideas. Look, I have an issue with the concept of employment. I think it's been a failed experiment that has been, I'm just going off your points too, Jay, around the system is broken, but it's also just working perfectly. That persecution of people who aren't in work has been going on for, all the way back to the Poor Laws in England, and then this is the colony, and those ideas have come out here, and you've seen various iterations of it. This idea of less eligibility and keeping people without dignity, so it's a way to discipline those that are in work. But then at a global level, it's been the biggest lie for people globally that the majority of the world are not in employment. It's been a failed promise of development globally. So all of this to say is that, that this idea of jobs guarantee, I think there are some more progressive ideas around jobs guarantee where you think about jobs as work in a very broad sense. I can see that working, and colleagues and I have worked on a proposal called Livable Income Guarantee in that respect. But ideally, personally, I'd like to see a universal basic income. I think unconditionality, universality is important, but I can see a livable income guarantee working sooner than that.
Now, I have some follow-up questions, but I just wanted to check first whether any other folks in the room might have some questions for either Jay or Elise, just about these ideas of the flaws. Yes, please. Do you feel like you can yell, or would you prefer to do one? Yeah, yell.
So, I have heard some people say that things like a job guarantee or UBI are not achievable without destroying the capitalist system itself. And that in fighting for that, what you have to do is destroy the capitalist system, and that is how you achieve it. And that it is otherwise unachievable. How would you respond to that?
Well, that is an excellent question. Thank you. So I guess the ideas that we hear around jobs guarantee and UBI are a little bit utopian to some people, and they feel like it's so far from where we are that how could we possibly get there, or even a long way towards it without tearing down capitalism and starting something completely new. And whether or not we're in favour of that idea is irrelevant. If the question is simply, can we do these things without having torn down capitalism? So I am going to go to Elise first, and then I will come to you, Jay.
Yes and no. It depends which proposal. So, for example, at the moment, elites in Silicon Valley are big supporters of basic income. And that is about paying people just enough to keep everyone's heads above water so we can keep consuming, keep the machine ticking. But it doesn't redistribute the wealth in a way that would allow people an economic base so we could do whatever we want, engage however we want. And that's the kind of radical idea, I think. If you think of a jobs guarantee in a very broad sense about what we think of work, but also as a basic income, give people an economic base to engage and in our lives in society as we like. There are very post-capitalist ideas possible there, but it also could be used just a way to rein everyone in. I will say that to really, the idea about capitalism relies on two things: exploitation of labour and also expropriation of stealing land and stealing labour, slavery and stealing of land. Those things still continue today, and so basic income in some ways can disrupt that, but not always. And I think that's what we have to be careful about, what kind of proposals get put forward.
Thank you. That was a great question, and thank you, Elise, for the answer. So, Jay, can we do these things? Please tell us. Capitalism or no capitalism? What do we need to get a UBI or jobs guarantee?
Yeah, well, I've probably been called impure before for my ideology, so that's a fact. Look, I'm not going to dwell too much on the capitalism aspect of it, but basically I do believe that we can get to a point where we can the livable income guarantee, which was explored in that fantastic paper that you should all read, by giving people the means to contribute directly into their communities, and therefore building and developing their own communities for their direct family, friends and so forth, I think is highly important. In the terms of jobs guarantee, I'm always, or full employment, I'm very skeptical of, because it's always just going to be about forced labour to me, and it will only ever come back to, I hesitate to use the word, but slavery, but it will always come back to forced labour. And I don't believe that we have been made to be, economic pawns, but I believe that we need to be given the capacity to develop our communities, and if there is a certain skill set or training that people need to develop to fill a certain role, then that needs to be guaranteed in order to progress further as a society. But there shouldn't be like a benchmark or measure of like any kind of job. Otherwise you have like 14 butchers in one store, and like living in Asia, you go to restaurants and there'd be like 6 people standing around waiting at a table, and that's just the idea of everyone needing to have a job even though it doesn't serve a purpose. Yeah.
Excellent. So what I'm hearing is right now we're being used to discipline wage labour, and then if we have full employment, everyone will be doing even more bullshit jobs. So low full employment, no, have bad unemployment payments. So I think all I'm hearing is get good unemployment payments and we're sweet. Nope.
It would be
Not that simple.
unemployment payments.
Yeah. So that's right. I wanted to just check. Are there any more? Yes, Daniel, please.
Just following on from that, and it's something that I've always wrestled with. So, in the 2020 Democratic primaries, I'm sure we all know the candidate Andrew Yang. His UBI proposal sucked, in really embarrassing ways, such as getting rid of other social safety nets that were not worth anywhere near the value of the amount he was proposing, and the amount he was proposing was also not anywhere close to the poverty line in America. And the problem is, we want a just UBI that would, or some kind of income guarantee that would allow everyone to live. But how do we sort of combat the nuance of that policy specifically sucks while still backing in it's a really nuanced and difficult conversation to have. And I guess it's more of a political framing question, how on earth do you tackle those kinds of toxic Trojan horses in a coherent way and not nuke the idea in public opinion?
It's a good question. I was also going to ask, what does a UBI mean if it's not enough to live on? Because that's a lot of proposals I see are UBIs that may replace or may not replace existing payments, but what good is $600 a month to me, or even indeed $2,000 a month when it still brings us nowhere near, that probably would bring us near, sorry, you shouldn't have done the maths really. But yeah, to me that's a great question. If everybody up to earning all the money gets $2,000 and I, who am not in traditional or conventional employment, get $2,000, how does that really make a difference if some people are still living in poverty? So I'm going to call this last question on this section, because we're then going to have a break and come back and get into actually some of the how do we resist and campaign about this stuff, because a lot of conversations I find tend to be very academic like this. What technical solutions are there to the problems that we face? And it's that was interesting, great stuff, but how do we actually advance those ideas? So no, that's literally the purpose of this part, is to do this bit. So Elise, if you wanted to quickly just tap into some of that complexity around the idea of a UBI or of a livable income guarantee, and what it means if it is not enough at the base level, and if we're going to have it be enough at the base level, what does it mean in terms of giving that to everyone up the income scale? Just a really good one.
Yeah. Look, I just reckon it's a great question, and maybe we can talk more, because you've probably got really good ideas about framing and all of this. I kind of think people, unfortunately it's because, people up on the hill treat us like we're stupid, and so they want one-liners and things like that. I kind of feel like people are up for the chat. People are up, and people have these questions, and we shouldn't shy away from you trying to spell out some of the difficulties in it. But, look, the universal bit, I'm sort of a bit stuck with the universal bit anyway, because it's never really universal, unless it's globally universal, because it does pick, and it does rely then on expropriation of people in the global south, so that we're rich enough here to continue, and all of that. So it's a bit tricky for me to think about the universal. But look, I think all of these things are political choices in the end anyway. We've just seen a government deliver a huge budget, and people got the supplement, but also there was a lot of money going to employers and other parts of society too. So you know, I think these things are political choices. I think there is enough to go around, more than enough. But it's just, you know, I mean, I'm sorry that I'm sort of, but I'm being utopian probably. But I actually think that's where we've got to stay and just keep making those demands.
Yeah. Thank you. So as I said, we are going to have a break now. So if you do have follow-up questions, I would say don't let Elise have a break. Don't let Jay have a break. Keep talking at you or to you. And when we come back, we're going to talk more about both immediate actions that we can take to resist and to protect ourselves in the current system, and also the kinds of work we might be able to do to take this forward. So thank you everyone for your attention and holding your attention when we are so far behind schedule. I really apologise again. And we've got, if you've got a wristband, you can go up and grab a drink. If you don't have one, come and ask for one. We are going to, after everyone's had a moment to go and grab a drink, we're going to pop on a video that GetUp have put together about the Job Active system and the related mutual obligation stuff. So that's a really interesting one. I think you will need to go back and watch it again after tonight, but it'll be on there. You can come up and have a look. We'll give it a couple of minutes so you've got time to go and do that. Come back and that'll be playing. So thank you so much so far. We'll be back soon.
If you've got a wristband,
I'm not coming over to talk to you, I'm coming to tell you.
Jay.
I was like walking over the map and probably thinking, oh my god.
Yeah, this is like the standard benefit. Yeah, the reasonable
Nina.
I've been
I don't know how to stop it. Oh. Do I just finish it?
Yeah. Just finish it.